Today, we're going to take a trip. A really, really big one. Not just through history as you know it, but through a totally different way of thinking about time itself. We're going to look back 12,000 years. And then we're going to try to peek 10,000 years into our own future. So yeah, let's dive in. So let me start by asking you a really simple question. What year is it? I mean, you know the answer instantly, right? But what if that number is just wrong? Not wrong in a mathematical sense, but wrong because it's missing a huge chunk of our own story. What if we've been starting the clock way, way too late? And this brings us to this really cool idea called the human era calendar. It's actually a pretty simple fix with some profound implications. You just add 10,000 years to our current date. So, by this new counting system, it's not the 2000s. Nope, it's actually the year 12,026 HE for human era. Okay, so why 10,000 years? What's so special about that number? Well, it turns out that's roughly when everything we think of as civilization really got started. It's when our ancestors started building the very first known temples. It's when they figured out agriculture. And it's when they laid the groundwork for villages, then cities, and, well, eventually the world we're all living in today. It's the real starting line for us as a species that builds. So, let's try it. Let's use this new calendar and look back at our story so far. The best way to think about these first 12,000 years is like humanity's long childhood. You know, this really extended period of slow, steady, foundational growth before the explosive, kind of chaotic teenage years of modern times. And this timeline, wow, it puts everything into such a wild perspective. Just look at how much empty space there is at the beginning. For thousands and thousands of years, progress was slow, it was incremental. And then, look at the very, very end of that line. In what is basically the blink of an eye, historically speaking, you get writing, the Industrial Revolution, the digital age. It's all just crammed into this tiny, tiny fraction of our story. And this chart just drives the point home brilliantly. For 95% of our species' existence, we were hunter-gatherers. Think about that. Everything we call history, empires, philosophy, science, the internet, all of it is stuffed into that tiny 5% slice. It kind of makes you realize we're all still running on the mental software of that ancient 95% version of ourselves. So realizing our place on this absolutely massive timescale, it's not just some fun little thought experiment. It actually should fundamentally change how we see our world right now. And this quote just nails it. This is the key takeaway. All of our achievements, all our worries, our entire modern world, it's all just one brief, brilliant moment, a tiny speck in this epic ongoing story that is so much bigger than us. And we are living inside that speck right now, this very second. So, if that was our past, what on earth does our future look like? If our story is already 12,000 years old, what could possibly happen in the next 10,000 years? Okay, this is where things get truly mind-bending. Just look at this future timeline. It's the mirror image of our past, right? But it's a vast, unknown territory stretching out in front of us. Those question marks, they aren't just empty spaces on the slide. They represent the entire future of humanity, an expanse of time that is just as long as the one we have already lived through. And that leads to a really crucial and honestly a kind of terrifying question. We've managed to get through 12,000 years, but let's be honest, it's been a pretty bumpy ride. So how can we possibly ensure that humanity is still around in the year 22,026? The challenges we're facing right now, climate change, wars, pandemics, they could very easily end our entire story right here inside this tiny little speck. Thinking on this grand scale suggests that for us to survive another 10 millenniums, our current way of being, it might just not be enough. We might need a fundamental upgrade. We might need to transition from what we could call humanity's era 1.0 into a completely new version of ourselves, era 2.0. So what could that even look like? Well, the ideas sound like they're pulled straight out of science fiction, but they actually come from a very real problem of long-term survival. Maybe we build these fully immersive, self-sustaining digital realities to outlast any threats to our planet. Or maybe we merge with technology, evolving beyond the fragile biological bodies that have gotten us this far. Maybe we even create these vast collective artificial brains to solve problems that our individual minds just can't wrap themselves around. And here's the critical point. As you can see on the left, our brains, our biological hardware, they evolved for short-term survival on the savannah. They're built for thinking about the next hunt, not the next 10,000 years. To survive in Era 2.0, we might need the kind of hardware you see on the right, something that is intentionally designed for long-term, millennium-spanning planning. Which really leaves us with one final thought. The hunter-gatherers of 12,000 years ago could never, ever have imagined our world. So if this time we're living in right now is just the end of humanity's childhood, the final days of Era 1.0, what and who will we become when we finally grow up?